we've got 4 characters that are each kind of different archetypes in horror consciousness. You've got Bear, Ian, Sarah, and Nikki. Bear, the traditional nice guy archetype of a character. He is at times compassionate, at times genuine of a person, incredibly shy, desperately wants to be with the character Nikki throughout this whole movie. He has redeeming qualities to him. He has understandable fears and insecurities of rejection and belonging, and I can see some of his places that he's coming from, putting myself in the shoes of a high schooler or a college age person, but he is still so deeply selfish as a person, to kind of an absurd degree as the movie keeps going. It's funny, general discourse with this movie, people were talking about, was he named Bear, in the midst of the whole man versus bear discussions. Regardless of whether there is something there with the script writing, even if that was or was not intention, it still really works as a naming choice for Bear, because amidst the masculinity that we associate with that name, it's not that Bear isn't living up in a masculine way to that name. It's that he is not protecting or caring for anybody in his life. He has friends caring for him and going out of their way to help him. He is not extending that on any level. And so it is a good naming choice to give him the name of Bear. We've got Ian. Ian is the kind of party boy archetype of horror movies, and yet he is still a compassionate friend. He has selfishness to him, but I think it's more shallow. Like it fits the more smooth-brained college boy kind of thing. And although Ian is at times a really shallow guy, he still really cares about his friends. He cares about Nikki and Sarah, and he cares for Bear, even though he sees him be a dumbass in a lot of ways. Even though there are selfish moments of Ian, he is still the friend that Bear needs, and yet Bear still rejects his help on so many levels. Sarah is a little less of a clearly defined archetype, but she does kind of fit into the overlooked, sidelined girl in the friend group, and also artsy. She has a drive that the other characters have, but you don't see it at first. It's as the plot continues to start seeing more of her. I love Sarah, and seeing where she goes with the plot, it's so sad, and yet I think her character and the dreams that she doesn't get to experience, and the things she doesn't get to achieve, is just heart-wrenching of what happens to her, what's done to her. Nikki, we honestly don't get to know much of Nikki. We know she wants to be a writer. We know she is maybe depressed or is showing symptoms of that. What's sad with Nikki is I can't talk about her much pre-Wish, because we don't get much of her. We only get like a little snapshot of Nikki, and pretty quickly Bear makes the wish, and now Nikki's no longer Nikki. The lack of what we get of Nikki, I think, is its own little injustice, that I struggle to think of things to say of Nikki outside of Bear's association to her, with her, and what he does to her. It's a good writing decision that we want more of her, but we don't get it, because we're forced to see most of her post-Wish. Now we've got post-Wish Nikki, which I'm gonna treat them as separate characters, because I feel that the movie drops enough hints with the lore that Nikki is not just being controlled. There is another entity that's entered into Nikki's body after the willow branch snaps. Post-Wish Nikki is, I love what they're doing with whatever this is. My wife and I saw this movie, and we were talking for a long time after seeing it, and she mentioned it might be the very first line Nikki says, or it's one of the first, when Bear snaps the branch. She's standing outside of her door, and it's a good creepy shot of how they lit her. It's kind of plays on stalker slasher energy of that figure watching you. I love how they subvert these horror images for someone who is not horrific, but through Bear's lens, it is that for him. Nikki comes up and she says, "My cat just died." And then Bear's like, "What?" And she's like, "No, I'm sorry. Your cat just died. I'm so sorry." That's such an interesting thing to choose for the first thing that Nikki post-Wish says, and it to me kind of implies that whatever this thing is was plopped into Nikki's body, came in with limited information, is trying to piece together, what am I entering into, like how can I appease the wish maker off of I don't fully know what has been done and said in this person's body before I got here. And to jump way ahead to the moment with the phone call where Bear is trying to lodge the complaint about the wish, and the operator says, "Do you want to speak to her?" And then we get transferred to Nikki and just hearing her horrifying screaming and wailing on the other end of the line. I hate it. Like that's one of the moments that stuck the most with me. She has been taken out of her body. I love that decision of removing autonomy in the way that she doesn't even get her body anymore. And just the tragedy of what's done to her with this selfish wish. Nikki's not even in this body anymore. We have moments where Nikki reemerges in her body, but some other entity is now in her. After seeing this movie, talking through this with my wife, something she pointed out, she's like, I wonder how old this entity might be. Because you got the moment at the party where Nikki is reciting this weird incestuous rewrite of Hansel and Gretel and certain things that post-wish Nikki says and does that's like, what is this thing like, and what's the age of this thing? And I think something you can point to is the first thing, big love gesture that she tries is make the shrine of the cat's dead body. And after seeing the movie, we were joking like, I mean, yeah, 100 years back, a couple hundred years back, if she tried this on some random Nordic boy, that probably would have just fully worked and it just would have been smooth sailing after that. It's such cool, subtle lore of, we don't know what this thing is. We don't know how long it may have existed. We don't know where it's come from, but it's here now. I love how they handle sexuality, but specifically nudity in this movie. We don't get really any nudity. We get a moment of seeing like Bear's butt, but the only legitimate full glimpse nudity we get is just the desecration of Sarah's body at the end. And I love that decision because it's not overly exploitative. Stuff like this where you're trying to do good feminist horror and not exploit your female actresses as you're telling sometimes very transgressive stories or doing very taboo things. It's a really fine line to walk of what nudity is horrific or what is sad and what is getting a little too close to titillating or it doesn't serve the story. What we get to see is so horrifying and so sad for Sarah and what's been done to her that Bear has to look at what he's caused, because he can try to explain away, no, this was Nikki who did this, but he brought all this upon himself, her, Sarah, and Ian, who just gets the stray bullet coming in. That restraint of, even in portraying sexuality, the restraint toward the nudity, I love the execution of that. Specifically in the sexuality, I love how, I hated the scene, but it is so well done, of the sex scene between Bear and Nikki. If you're paying attention at all, is not a sex scene. Like you see Nikki's expressionless face, you see her you hear her miming horn-like sounds in almost a robotic way into Bear's ear. Everything on the screen, from how they shot it, sound design, the actors' performances, everything's telling you this is not a sex scene, this is not a love scene, this is an assault that we're watching. This is the complete lack of consent of Nikki, whatever consent her entity can offer. This is not the romantic moment that Bear is imagining for them. And with that, I like that with Bear, let me say in general, this movie, I think, pushes on male fear of female aggression, or in some ways, kind of just female screaming or female loudness. Most of the movie, this isn't a jump scare movie. It is a bit of an auditory jump scare movie, but Nikki's not the jump scares. Like there's no moments where she kind of sneaks up on Bear or something. It's just her screaming or wailing or her banging on a door or something. And there's moments where you can be momentarily startled by something like that, and it's understandable. But Bear is scared of intensity, and he's scared of loudness, and he's scared of bluntness. The first night when she first comes home with him, Nikki, they're starting to kiss, and then true Nikki is back in her body for a second. She's like, whoa, what the fuck? And she kind of jumps back and is startled, and then very quickly the entity takes back over and she's smoothing over the situation, trying to pacify Bear, and Bear is freaking out at that moment. And if that was just a one-time moment in the movie, I think you'd say they maybe aren't playing into this, I don't know a better phrase than just male insecurity toward female expression and blunt, more physical female expression. But there's a couple instances where Bear just fully retreats in himself and just sheepishly submits in this way that he's not comfortable. He doesn't want to be submitting in this way in this moment, but he is just so deeply uncomfortable, like in his own skin. And that choice for Bear is such a a good detail, because a lot of nice guys like this archetype that Bear fits into kind of fall into this. Like it is a little incel adjacent of, with these nice guy like characters, a lot of times there's not physicality, there's not aggression, there's not being overly domineering or aggressively masculine. A lot of times there is shyness or meekness, and that is where it can get really insidious for guys like Bear, where you have the personal satisfaction or pride or reassurance that I never got physical with her. You know, I didn't cross this line. I didn't touch her or hurt her in some way, and that gives you this kind of peace of mind, like you're in the clear, like you didn't emotionally do all these things to her or mentally do all these things to her. It makes me think a lot of the Buffy bot stuff, and it is funny with this movie. This is something else my wife and I were talking about, is we really feel like where movies are at now and just commonplace online discourse and Gen Z perspective, there's a larger discussion and comfortability with talking about consent and being more respectable toward women in very good ways. This largely is much better discourse than what I grew up with. And we were talking about if Obsession had been made back in 2012 or 2014, maybe even 2018, Bear may have been a much more redeemable character. He maybe would have made it out alive at the end, or much more likely Nikki would have died by the end, or there would have been more of a punishment Nikki would have narratively gone through. I think, thinking of some of the toxic creepiness that I grew up with, these nice guy threads where they, at the end of the day, they are lovable. They need to be redeemed on some narrative level, and I don't know if we would have gotten the ending that we got in Obsession today had it been made 10 years back. Or if they wanted to, they could have done the real grimdark ending of make Bear kind of settle for this relationship that he had with demonic Nikki, essentially, and they just kind of settle into a campy domestic spousal ending where they just choose to be together. Honestly, if this had been directed by like Ari Aster or someone, I think they probably would have done that ending nowadays. But I love the decisions Curry Barker, I'm looking at his name. Curry Barker's a man. Like, that's, watching the movie, I was floored by how good a feminist horror it was. I just looked it up and I was like, man, this guy's a dude. Props to Curry Barker. I think ways that Obsession didn't let me down, and then how other movies over time have started to let me down, is the women stay the core of this story all throughout, and their experience in this world as women stay the core of the horror and the wrongdoing and the loss of agency. And you see that with how Ian and Bear are kind of aimless. They don't have drive or passions, really. Sarah does. Sarah knows artistically what she wants to go for in life, and she has this passion. Nikki also does, although it's so tragic that we get to see so little of Nikki, that we only get to see a little bit of her drive and a little bit of her passion, and it's taken away because she gets taken over by the wish. Bear's friendship with her, they have a legitimate friendship too. It's not just, even though he has such deeply unhealthy things in him and he's so selfish, he does still care about her, and he does still know things about her. The detail of, he knows she wouldn't like the Sunshine in a Rock necklace, assuming that Bear's correct in that assessment. The way that the movie portrays it, I think that's probably accurate. Bear knows things about Nikki, and they do have a closeness, but it's one-sided, because to Nikki, he's a genuine friend to her. When he's driving her home in the car, Nikki says, like, you're my only friend I can talk about this deeper stuff with. And Bear doesn't hear the depth of the friendship in those words. He just smiling like a dumbass. He's so smiley the whole time he's around her. And I can go back and try to picture myself as a high schooler or as a college student, and I can feel some of Bear's fears, and I can picture some of his insecurities of loss and of rejection. But even in the moment when she's talking about not light stuff with him and saying, like, I feel like I can really share this stuff with you, still his brain is just thinking like, oh, maybe she does like me. Like, it's so, he does not want the friendship that she wants. Props to Michael Johnston. I hated him in this movie, but he's giving a great performance. Like, he has this really shy fear that he acts with, and he's like terrified of doing anything and taking ownership of his life in such a believable way. That was something else with the set choice and where Bear is living, that he's living in the house that belonged to his grandmother, and maybe his grandmother actually died in the house, or at least starting to die in this house, and he's touched nothing in this house. Like, this house looks like death. Nothing's been moved. He hasn't come in and made this his home on any level. That paired with his job, paired with he has no motivations except get Nikki. It's like he's living his life just waiting for it to begin. If I can just have this girl, then my life will actually start. I love how they turn that setup on its head in this movie, because we've had a lot of How I Met Your Mother-y kind of stories that have that kind of hook, and it's a positive thing, and I am so happy to see how they bring out the horror in that. Something else I loved was the interaction with him and Ian when, before the party, Ian is concerned of Bear potentially just taking advantage of Nikki going through a tough spot in life. You could read some selfishness and some manipulation into Ian there, because they've been hooking up over the years, and Nikki and Ian, they do have some little hints that they both have some feelings toward each other, even if it's conflicted. How, like, she wants to ride with him, he's not quick to offer up Bear to drive her, stuff like that. I do read Ian, the actor's performance with Ian in that moment, that even if there's some selfishness, even if there's some ulterior motives, he still cares about Bear and doesn't want him taken advantage of, and he cares about Nikki. He wants her to be okay. But I brought up Ian and Bear's conversation because by this point, a lot has happened. A lot of horrifying things have already started happening. Bear knows by now Nikki's not right, and it's because of this thing that I did. Now is the moment of the horror movie where you need to bring in your friend and try to convince them. I know this is going to sound crazy, but this thing is happening. Will you listen to me on this? And Bear doesn't do any of that. He still saves face. He doesn't tell Ian any details. Doesn't even approach opening the conversation, like with, dude, she did this creepy thing where she duct taped my door shut. In male spaces, it's so easy to broach misogynistic conversations. Like, it's so easy to bring up my crazy ex, or you won't believe this thing that happened, and it's so easy for men to start bonding over the craziness or irrationality of women that they perceive. Bear doesn't even try doing that. He has so much ego and selfishness, and I can fix this, I can find a way to fix this, that he doesn't say anything. And at this point, he knows Nikki's not safe. He knows he's not safe, but yet there's still a part of him that's, I can fix this. I read it as chauvinistic part of him that's like, no, I'm going to figure out how to fix this. I'm going to work it out. I'm going to make it right. And I'm going to work out some kind of future with Nikki and I. Because that's the other detail that's great, is when Bear's realizing something real's here. This isn't just a wish gimmick thing. He doesn't want to take away the wish. He just wants her to start acting normal. That's a great detail with him that it comes up a couple times in the dialogue, where I think if whatever entity is in Nikki, if it acted more peaceful and in some ways just less loud at times, I think Bear could have lived with it. I really think so, because he's so desperately trying to, if there's a way I can work it out where Nikki will be okay. And then there's moments where he's like, I just need you to act a bit more normal. And there's a bit of, on the horror movie side, there's a little bit of like, I'm going to carefully communicate with the demon right now. But there's this deep selfishness in him, jarringly, villainously selfish. Like when she wakes up at that moment when the entity's asleep and we hear Nikki and she's like, please kill me, begs him multiple times. He maybe for a split second is shocked by that. Then he just jumps mentally to being so offended of her to say this, like, would I be so bad today? Which is like, are you listening to the words that she's saying to you right now? She's asking for you to kill her right now. Seeing her suffering, he's still so deeply just wants, we have to be together and I'll find a way to make it work. Now is the moment where he initiates and is more bold in expressing his frustration toward her. When Nikki is in this place of despair at this moment, like, for his mind to jump there is so insidious. I hate it, but I love that detail about it. I want to transition, because I keep talking about Bear right now. I want to transition to Nikki, to Indy Neverett. She's phenomenal. I'm sure most people seeing this movie are saying she's the standout performance. She's not only the standout performance, she gave a performance that, I don't want to overhype the movie, but I legitimately think for future decades, her performance will motivate and influence future future possession performances, future loss of autonomy performances, future just all different ways that you can do different types of feminine horror. Her decisions of how she acted were so insanely good. She really was amazing. One production thing I like that is props to both her and the team. The only snapshots we get into, this is not just Nikki, there's something else in here visually, is the moment where we reverse her footage where she's like moving backward. That decision is so good. That's another big bit of props I want to give to the whole team behind this movie, is they really let these performances breathe. I don't feel like these characters had to fight the edit at all. Like, it's just such a dialed in movie. We get to see Nikki go through possession tropes, go through a little bit of Stepford Wives references, or some of the imagery that they use. We get to see her play with a few different big archetypes of women being taken control of in horror. This movie to me is really effective in its gratuitousness, which a lot of times I'm quick to critique gratuitousness without purpose. Everything they choose to show us and everything they have us hear, or everything they imply, is necessary to show the horror of what Nikki's going through, what Sarah's later put through. That's a whole other thing, is Sarah's death is so heartbreaking. That's something I want to go back to Bear on for a second, is the two most genuine moments we see for Bear. And what I mean is the most genuine emotion and outpouring of honesty is when Bear's cat dies and when he hears about the acceptance letter for Sarah. We may see Bear more emotional than he ever is in the movie when his cat dies by his own negligence. I would argue we see the most emotion from him in that moment at the very beginning, because even at the end when he has the moment where he screams in the car, that's kind of all else we get. For the rest of the movie, he's holding things in. He will not let himself express himself. The closest he gets to expressing himself is his anger toward Nikki when she's asking him to take her life. But the other genuine moment is you see a legitimate friendship with Bear and Sarah. He is truly happy for her and truly excited for her. And yet, in that conversation with the car where he sneaks out to talk to her and she has the letter, he's excited for it, and yet there's that part of him that's still flirting with her, that's still thinking of, can I get in her pants? In the midst of everything that's happened, the horror that he's brought upon himself and Nikki, he still is flirting with Sarah right now. That narrative decision is so good, because men like Bear, sometimes they snap out of it and sometimes they don't. And Bear's one of those guys who, until the last plot moment where he has to, break the wish with either the gun or the pills, until that moment he does not snap out of it. Bear knows how wrong this is. He knows what he's done to her, and yet he's still just, would you please just be Nikki? Like, it's just such perfectly dialed in tragedy here. I also love the detail that Bear doesn't have the guts to use the gun. Time is of the essence in the midst of this moment. Like, if he really wants to save her from what he's locked her into, he knows, but he still can't work himself up to it, and he still just opts for the pills, which maybe wouldn't be a great shot either anyway, so it's like, maybe that's still the better option. But it's narratively such a good choice that he can't face that. He opts for the least confrontational, the least violent way to go, and then he still tries to make himself throw up for a minute afterward. Like, he still tries to take it back. That's such a good, yet again, selfish detail of what motivates him. Something my wife also pointed out, this random thought that I thought was really cool, is in the dialogue toward the beginning when she first gets to his house and she's like, and comes in and into the kitchen and is smelling. She's like, oh, it smells like you. And Bear's like, whoa, smell weird? That's a funny moment. But earlier that day, his cat died, and he threw his cat away, still in a trash bag that is probably still in the house, or maybe it's in the dumpster outside. And this is the house that his grandmother died in, or was close to dying in. This looks like a place that probably smells like, kind of like antiseptic death. A hint of that wafting around. Is that kind of a fun foreshadowing of this will also be where Bear dies, because he will smell like death as well? Maybe not. That may have just been a coincidence in the script writing, but it's a good coincidence because it is the house he dies in, just like his grandmother died in. There's something else with, and I haven't fully thought through this, I'd probably have to watch this again and sit with it more, but there's no mothers in this world. There's only fathers. There's a grandmother who's dead. The only living members are kind of distant fathers. Nikki's father explicitly distant from her. Sarah's dad seems kind and supportive, but he does seem to struggle to connect with her or to reassure her. The story that unfolds for Sarah and Nikki feels even more supported and even more tragic that they have no other women around them helping them. Yeah, I think there's something there. The last thing I want to say is Nikki's final moment where Bear has taken his own life. She's, again, phenomenal acting from her. She's freaking out. She's about to pull the trigger, and then she finally snaps out. Thank God. What sticks with me, and as it was ramping up, what was making me hopeful was, I don't know how the magic in this world works. Like, is there gonna be a way that some of the actions of the wish get undone? Like, can Nikki have any of her life back? And no, she doesn't get anything back. I hate it, but I love the writing decision to make it so tragic and just so harrowing. She's lost everything, not by any decision of her own. For what she would have suspected, she probably never would have thought Bear would do such a selfish wish, especially when she's directly asked him, do you have feelings for me? Still, he just lied to her face. Like, I know you're scared of the rejection, you're scared to just come out and say it, but still, you just lie again and again and again to her. And for Nikki, the trauma that she has to come away from this day with of, I wouldn't have thought that Bear would have done something like that to me. Like, I thought we were friends. Why didn't he try to reverse the wish days earlier or weeks earlier? Why did it take him so long to have so much taken from her? And at the end of all this, she's on the security cameras, like, disposing of Sarah's body with Bear. Like, she's done so much. Whatever prison or mental hospital she's gonna end up in, all this stuff, all of her future, all of her life, just ripped away from her because of some selfish intentions of this random man. All this was done for her, and yet, if nothing else, she at least has the solace of she has her body again. Like, she's not stuck in this weird hell dimension anymore. Like, there's no going back for her. Her life is ruined by this, but she still at least has life in her body again and can fully exist in her body under her control again. All right, I'm going to call it there. Thank you for watching through all this rambling and jumbled thoughts about this movie. I loved it. To me, this was one of the best, not just one of the best modern horror movies I've seen, probably just one of the best horror movies I've seen, in the tightness of the script and the performances and the lasting horror that's not just a bump in the night. It is the trauma and vindictiveness and selfishness done to people who don't deserve it. It's the right kind of horror that says something about our world. I'm gonna cut it off. I'll keep rambling. Thanks for watching.